My name is Evinda Lepins. I can't help but laugh out loud when I think of the journey that my God has brought me to and through. It's riddled with all kinds of childhood issues, which creates more issues, which, like I said, should have made me become a statistic. Therefore, because of that, I will tell you, I myself was very, very unlovable and a very difficult person. But of course, I didn't know that. I did not know that. So in case you're wondering, well, who are you? Why, what gives you the credentials? Well, I'm the author of a few books, and what's crazy, it's all I ever wanted to do is write one book. And from a book came a blog, and from a blog, a series, and from a series, a nonprofit corporation, and here we are 9 books later. So what we want to talk about today is what is it, like I said, that makes people unlovable? They weren't just born out of the womb being difficult. Yeah, we know we've all had cranky babies and whatnot, but that's completely different. Oftentimes, what we forget is that how we were loved totally affects how we love. And, that is something that I have learned from Milan and Kay Yurkovich. It's a book for those of you who like to read. Even if you don't, this will rock your world. It's called, what is it called? How We Love. And it's by Milan and Kay Yurkovich. And you can find it on Amazon. But anyways, it's an amazing, amazing book. And one of the first things that I think stood out to me the most from that book was a question that they asked: do you remember as a child, adolescence, ever needing comfort and not receiving it from those who were in charge of loving and nurturing you? In other words, your parents or whomever. Nowadays we have nanas and papas raising children. It's becoming a different generation, and I truly believe that's a whole other coffee hour, but that is, I believe, an opportunity to redeem those little generations, and even God works tremendous things through that. I've been through that, and again, that's, stories for other coffee hours. But I think it's just really important that we understand that when we're thinking about the lovable the unlovable people in our life, we've got to remember they weren't born that way. And when I ask you that question, and I want to ask you, each of you that are watching, can you think of a time when you were younger, a child growing up, that you needed comfort for whatever reason, and you got it? Now, when I read that question, I have to be completely honest with you and share with you that my answer was no. And as you can see, it still stings to that day, but man, how profoundly freeing it is to understand the reason I did a lot of the stuff that I did. So it begins there. I want to share that with all of you that, daddies do this. Daddies do the framework, and mommies, they color it in. So, for instance, my son, he walked around from the time he was 4 years old until whenever without a framework, because his dad wasn't necessarily in his life. He was out more than he was in. So here I am being mommy and trying to make up more of this to accommodate this. It doesn't work. God definitely does right what's wrong, but I will tell you that it doesn't work. So that's a key thing I want y'all to think about, y'all. Like, I just got back from Texas. Can you tell? Man, I could so live there. So it's a good thing to remember when you're thinking of these people that are unlovable, that you remember that they weren't born to be unlovable, okay? So that's kind of, a different terminology than just giving them the benefit of the doubt. So oftentimes there's things that happen to us, about us, that create what I call roots. And I have done a lot of research into this, and that research has produced a 4-part curriculum that I am literally watching lives change through that curriculum. I'm so humbled by that and excited. So what I want to do is I want to read to you from one of my parts of my curriculum about the roots. Why is it that people are lovable unlovable and difficult? And so I'm just going to pull it off of one of my parts here and give you some things to think about And today I'm going to close with the very first step of how we learn to love these unlovable people, okay? Okay, so first of all, remembering that how we were loved affects how we love. Then, think about this. What if there was child physical abuse in that person's life? Now, keep in mind, we don't have the video camera into anyone's life. We don't. We may think we do, but we don't. What if there was child neglect? I gave you the analogy of the framework being the dad and the nurturing being the mom. Well, my goodness, in my situation, I was so busy trying to make a living to, support myself and my son that I did the best that I could with what I had, but it wasn't enough. Okay, it wasn't enough. So there was a form of neglect, if you will. And so I remember back in my single parenting days, it becoming a matter of quality of time, not quantity of time. Okay, so how about child sexual abuse? That's being talked about more and more, but back in the day when I was growing up, from the ages of 5 to 12 is when it happened for me. We didn't talk about that. So I was a prisoner of my own circumstances for many, many years. But it wasn't something we talked about. Now we have a lot of people, thank goodness, being able to talk about it, and yet there's still so many people that are ashamed and they keep it hidden. And they think, I've prayed to Jesus, I don't have to worry about it, all of that. Okay, how about abandonment? Abandonment covers not just a physical presence, but abandonment also covers an emotional abandonment. So like again, I'm going to use myself as an example. And my son is an amazing, amazing dad to this day. And I'm so excited. This is a proof that God does right what we do wrong. But a good example is I wasn't as emotionally available for my son because I was so busy doing life, trying to do life for both of us. So there's a couple different types of abandonment. We've got a couple people in class whose parents died at a young age. That's a sense of abandonment. It's not that they did it on purpose, but it's abandonment nonetheless. Okay? All right, so then we have emotional unavailability. That's another form of abandonment. How about addictions of parents? Not too many of us are going to raise my hands. Oh, my mom was an alcoholic, because we're taught to just kind of hide behind that mask and not really share that kind of information. I tell you that kind of stuff, sorry for that noise on the phone, you guys, that kind of stuff affects us and causes what I call roots and makes people unlovable and difficult. Death of a loved one, covered that. That's tragic. I don't care how old they are. And remember, cognitive memory starts happening at the age of 5, but sometimes younger. Divorce, man, for those of you who are embarking on those waters, painful, 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 and don't think that your children aren't affected because they are. And yet many people say, they hung in there for the sake of the kids. And yet while they were hanging in there, did they do anything different? Or were they just hanging and white knuckling? How about constant moving? If you were a part of a military family and always on the move, that could create things as well. I think they said, another just shared the video. I do appreciate it. Thanks whoever is sharing the video. I so appreciate it because we really want to spread the word of hope and help. And this is free. Isn't this great? It's always been my dream. I'm going to let you in on a fantasy right now to have a radio show. Now a radio show means you wouldn't see me. And I'd like that, but that's okay because this is how we're rolling. It's all good. Okay, so how about roots beginning in adulthood? Those can begin as a loss, thank you, Gay, can begin as a loss from a loss of a job. A lot of people, when they lose their career, they get really, really shaky. And I can honestly say that my husband has gone through that. I went through that several years ago. God took me away from court reporting and put me on the operating table, so to speak, and did surgery in my heart and changed the direction of my life. Crazy, crazy story. Again, another coffee hour time. I want to give a big shout out to everybody on there, but I realized yesterday as I was going for a run planning this that I have to be careful because I don't know who's okay with me saying, hey, thanks for joining, and who's not okay. So I'm just going to say, I see you. Thank you very, very much. And I see those hearts. I really appreciate it. Okay, so again, loss of parent, divorce, loss of a significant other, a spouse, a friend, a family member. Those can create roots if we keep the emotional dashboard in the off position and we don't deal with those things. Those can create roots which cause us to become unlovable and difficult. Extreme unexpected changes. Wow. Many of us are very rigid in our lives and in our schedules, and it's a form of control, believe it or not, again, for another coffee hour. But unexpected changes for some of us can really, really rock us and knock us down. Then we have addictions of other family members. Been there, done that, got the hat, mug, t-shirt, bathrobe, curler, slippers. Yes, that is incredible how that really spilled into my life. And I will tell you, I wasn't okay when someone in my life that I loved wasn't sober. And so thank you, Tammy, for saying that. So that's ginormous. When our well-being becomes wrapped up in the well-being of another, we know we have not only identity issues, but we ourselves can become unlovable and difficult. Then we have unhealthy, abusive relationships. I am appalled at the number of relationships, the number of people that stay in abusive relationships simply for the reason that it's comfortable. And the thought of getting out of them makes it really, really scary. And we oftentimes don't want to push past our comfort zone. And so that makes it really difficult. And you might think that it doesn't affect you. It's so crazy because I took a deposition yesterday of a psychiatrist, and this bowled me over. You know, as a court reporter, because I still do court reporting, but as a court reporter, you're supposed to kind of be seen and not heard, you know, and you're not supposed to show any emotion. Well, here was this psychiatrist saying no to this question that this attorney asked, which was, so you're telling me that a person in a 23-year abusive marriage has no effects? And the guy said yes. I almost fell out my chair and quit reporting. I could not believe it. And the excuse he gave, I'm sorry, was lame. And I mean, I'm not thinking myself better than anybody. This guy is a doctor, for crying out loud. But wow, I just got this feeling that he too probably hides behind a mask, but I won't be throwing stones there because that's not cool. So I have a question here. Let me stop and answer this question. How long do we continue to love the unlovable who doesn't know they are hurting you? That's the problem, my friend. There comes a point in time where you got to let them know, ouch. You have to say ouch. And, you know, there's a saying in the Bible, there's a verse in the Bible that says 7 times 77, and pretty much if you're counting, you're not forgiving. And yet God didn't call you to be a doormat. You know, when Jesus bent down in the sand and he drew that line in the sand, which means flexible, I'm dying to know the words he wrote underneath that line. But all of us come to a point in time for our own sanity and for our own self-love that we have got to draw that line. And we can still love from a distance. I've had many people in my life where I've had to love from a distance, you know, and I've got somebody on here and she says it's okay for me to identify her. I have to tell you, she was on my list of unlovables. And just 2 weeks ago, there we were celebrating our grandson's birthday, and she was rubbing my bottom of my foot because it has plantar fasciitis. And I have to tell you, my sweet friend, that foot doesn't hurt hardly at all anymore. We need you to rub the other one. So, but there was years of persevering and praying through and just working on my own stuff instead of trying to change her. So this stuff really does work. So as far as how long, I don't think we can put a timeline on it, my sweet friend. The key is you must let them know when they're hurting you, because you might think that they already know, and yet that's part of our problem too, those unspoken rules, which we're going to talk about next week, which definitely make people unlovable. So I hope that that answered your question, my sweet friend. Okay, so I want to move on to an introduction to this series. And there's somebody on here, and I think it's okay for me to announce her, but this is all her fault. She, when I started blogging, I blogged this series, and she says, I have no results. You know what? I read a verse in the Bible yesterday in it was in Genesis about Sarah and Abraham, and it specifically said for the appointed time. And so God is not a God of time per se, and you got to keep on keeping on and keep on keeping on. So I know that if you continue to persevere and pray, there will be results. It's just we got to get our focus back on our own stuff. Yeah, I do know your story, sweetheart. I do know it. I do know it. And so, again, loving from a distance, so we just got to keep going back and practicing these steps. So what I want to do, as I was saying, it's this person's fault because I started this blog called Loving the Unlovable. It was the 10 steps. And the crazy thing about it was about my biological mom, whom up to that point I had no relationship with, because I was taken away from her when I was 12 years old. So I want to read you an introduction because from that blog came a request for me to do a workshop. And so I went to my book team and man, I wish some of them were still with me because I could never have dreamt this roller coaster ride. I just couldn't have. I had no idea. But from that series, we did this workshop. And then after that workshop, there was another workshop and another and another. And it became apparent that people really do want help. Now, wanting help and wanting to do the work are two different things. And that has probably been one of my biggest things that I've grieved in the 7, almost 8 years that I've been doing ministry and answering this call is, wow, people cry help, but they don't want to do the work. But I want to read you the introduction to this. I'm trying to remember what page it was on. Okay, 148. And this is, by the way, this is my first published book. It's actually A Cup of Encouragement for the Day, and it's subtitled Coffee Hour. And isn't that crazy? See, because when I started this whole crazy thing, and I was told I had to have a blog, I went for a run and asked, really, God, do I have to do this? And he gave me the name, and it was Coffee Hour at Chicklet Power. And now it's Coffee Hour Live. Isn't this crazy? I tell you, I couldn't have imagined. Okay, so page 148, let me go to this, and I want to read you this. Several years ago, I was writing down my goals for the upcoming new year, and this is something that I began to do mid-December, and I try to complete it somewhere around the first of the year. I divide my goals into 2 categories, monetary and then personal and spiritual. Actually, that's 3 categories, but personal and spiritual I've lumped together. At this point in my life, I had become very aware of the necessity to love the unlovable and or difficult people in my life, as well as the people that I didn't think loved me. Don't we all have those? You just know they can't stand us, right? What brought me to this realization? Well, probably a combination of things because everything seems to be a process, especially with me. But the final light in my head turned on when my sister died. She succeeded in drinking herself to death and died just 2 days after her 50th birthday. I'll never, ever forget the taste of anger that rose in my throat as I watched my alcoholic mother during the memorial. I was so shaken by the revelation of unresolved anger in me towards her, and when it hit me in the face with a force to be reckoned with, I knew I couldn't let it go untamed. My sister's life and her death helped me realize that when my life is over and I stand before our Father, He's not going to ask me how so-and-so treated me. No, He's going to talk to me about how I treated them, despite how they treated me. So that year, on my personal and spiritual side of my goals, I wrote, get better at loving, ... So today, my friends, can I encourage you to just begin this journey with me? There is a reason this is happening, and I don't take it lightly. Will you begin by finding something to write in, a journal, I was going to say a Post-it note, but I really want you to keep track of this journey. Would you get a journal? And would you just remember these words, get better at loving, ... And begin to write those names down. Hi, sweetheart. And you know what? I have to honestly tell you that when I started this, I thought, oh yeah, really? But writing them down makes it real. And we can no longer run from our own issues that need to be resolved, that we might learn how to be lovable and not difficult with those unlovable and difficult people. So write it down, and next week I want you to bring your list to our live coffee hour. And I'm going to have you all tell me, and hopefully it'll work on my laptop so I can comment to all of you right back. But bring it, and you don't have to tell me who they are. But what I'm going to ask you to do next week is I'm going to ask you to tell me how many are on your list. Because you guys, I'm serious, these steps work. Because the people that were on my list, most of them are off my list, and the ones that are not off my list have moved down on my list. So in other words, they're not number 1, they might be number 10. So, does everybody understand that? And trust me when I say this, if you are married, your spouse is going to be on your list, I am sure. That's okay. But they usually hop on and off because all that stuff waxes and wanes. So don't be afraid to put things down. Make it real, write them down, and bring them next week to our coffee hour. And we are going to talk about some unspoken rules and unrealistic expectations that cause people to become unlovable and difficult. Until then, may I encourage you, get started in this journey. And you know that you are here for a purpose. God bless you. And thanks so much for watching. And when this is done, would you do me a favor and share this? Because we want to spread I'm so not wanting to get popular, but we need to spread the database and get people out and aware so that we can increase our territory. And I need you to help me do that. Okay? Thanks so much. God bless and make it a great day today.